Well, I'm back. Yes, the video's so nice we gotta do it twice. We are back finally to finish up the female R&B group tier list. It's finally that time.
Ooh, are we talking about Beyonce?
We already did that. We did it. We went through this the last time. And it's not Beyonce. We did Destiny's Child. Not Beyonce and them. We did Destiny's Child. We already did it.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Well, what do you want me to do? You want me to do Beyonce and Blue Ivy?
Yes, it's a great idea.
That is a terrible idea. We, as a consolation prize, how about we do Chloe and Halle? That's the closest thing to her children.
Okay, fine.
It's either that or the little fuzzy rats from the Lion King. Like, what you want?
They're not rats.
They were some... I've not seen the new movie, but that first movie, they look like rats. I'd rather put bun squeaks in there. Anyway, let's get down to business. I know that it's ladies first, but I might be the first running out of this video if I have to put up with this much longer. R&B female tier list is what we here for. D Roth, save me. Welcome. Yep. Thank you for joining your boy for another edition of the Soul and Stereo Sessions right here on YouTube. I mean, obviously, you know where you are today. And also today, where you are is the place for R&B female groups. If you couldn't tell by our little rambling intro, yes, we're doing part 2 of the tier list. So, if you missed part 1 of the tier list, we're going to show you what you missed. D Roth, hook these folks up and show them what we cooked up last time. So yes, here's the tier list that we created on the last go round, ranking the best girl groups ever. It's weird that we didn't have anybody in the A tier. We'll take care of that this time, I'm sure. But now that you've seen the completed part 1, D Roth, show them the clean version, the clean part 2 tier list. It's empty now, but it's going to be filled up with 20-something girl groups. Again, if you missed the tiers, this is how they break down. S tier is the top tier, the legends, the greatest that we have. A tier are dope ladies. B, C, and of course, player please. Sisters, you do not want to get in player please. So before we get started, you know what it is. We got to take care of some housekeeping. Make sure if you haven't already to hit like on this video. I know everybody always begs everyone that's watching their videos to hit like, but it really is a small click for you. It means a lot for that YouTube algorithm. Have mercy on us, YouTube. So you can help us out by hitting that like button. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. You're going to like this video. I promise if you're an R&B fan, you're going to like all the content we have. So make sure you subscribe. And when we're done, be sure to share this video with the R&B fans in your life. Enough talking. Now let's get to the ladies. Number 2, yes, part 2 of the R&B female group tier list. Let's get it. And we are starting off hot and heavy with Brownstone. Oh my goodness. I love that these ladies are getting almost a second chance, a second breath of life in their career thanks to the, sometimes memes do good. Sometimes they do the Lord's work. And this time they do. I see so many memes and just clips of their greatest hits and people are losing their minds because they cannot believe that 3 women can have the power of the Mississippi Mass Choir. That's what they sound like. Just 3 women. Incredible, incredible vocals. Their vocals were incredible in an era when everybody's vocals were incredible. That shows you how dope they are. And even though they only had 2 albums, both of the albums were very good, especially the first one. The first one was excellent. Great singles that are very well remembered today. These ladies are great. Now, I can't go S tier because they don't have that top tier legacy that some of the others have. Like they don't have the SWV style hits. They don't have the longevity. But they sure have the talent and they sure have the albums that back it up. So we give them an A tier. Told you. We missed out the A tiers last time, but we hit it hot and heavy on this one. A tier for Brownstone. Next up is Zhané. So Zhané is interesting because I feel like people kind of put them in this box of being one-hit wonders. Like they've had plenty of hits, way more than Hey Mr. DJ. I mean, Groove Thing, Sending My Love, all of those were probably even bigger hits on the charts than that one. And then they had later hits on their second album. Another group that's pretty vastly underrated for who they are, but they just did not. They were in an era that was so competitive that their songs got a lot of love, and if you liked it, you liked it, but their legacy didn't carry on into previous decades as some of the bigger names of the R&B female groups. But for what they were, I thought they were incredible. And let me tell you a story about their second album, which is back there sometimes. And this shows that if you listen to an album, sometimes you gotta let it sit. So I got their second album in 97, 98, whenever it dropped. And I wasn't feeling it at all. Like, I thought it was so boring. 97, 98, I was not feeling it. I went back to this album like 5 years later. I was living in Louisville, sitting in my apartment, bored, threw this on, and I thought the album was incredible. It was like 5 years of growing and wisdom had changed my perception totally. And I loved their second album when before, if you asked me in 97, I'm like, oh, this is a boring flop. So, your lesson for today, kids, give these albums a chance. I know y'all like to skim them on Spotify and then throw them away, call them garbage and never listen to them again. Give it another chance because you might have a hit on your hands. But anyway, that's my rant for Zhané. And where they go is the B tier because they're great. But again, I don't feel like they reached quite the levels of a Brownstone and definitely not the levels of the S tier. Very, very good group. But we just didn't get enough of them. And unfortunately, I'm going to be saying a lot of that on this video. Next up is JS, the Ice Cream Ladies. If you even remember these girls, props to you. You are an R&B head if you remember them. So JS, aka the Johnson Sisters, they were around in the mid-2000s when the Isley Brothers were doing their Mr. Biggs thing. They did a lot of backup stuff for them. And they also were on Mr. Biggs, Ron Isley's label, connected to him, relationship with him. Like they were hooked up with Ron. The problem is, be outside of the Ron Isley connection, I never really got the big deal with them. Look, I know they must be nice ladies. Look, I love Ice Cream like the rest of them. Ice Cream was their single, by the way, which I didn't like at all. I just wasn't feeling any of the stuff that they came out. Maybe if they had time to mature later on and find their sound, but from the one album we got, the single we got, sorry, D Roth, player pleasing. I was not a fan. But I'll tell you who I was a fan of, and that was Nina Sky. Oh, I was digging me some Nina Sky in 2000, which is weird because most of y'all would be like, what's the dig? They had one song. They did. That one song was everywhere, and if that beat hits today, you're going to be moving your body like the rest of them because that was the 2000s club banger. They were so much fun. I thought their project, their solo album was, well, their debut album was solid. They did a lot of features back in that era, and they always sounded great. There was some more, in my opinion, meat on the bone for them. They were kind of hit and miss as far as their output, going from that big run in the 2000s when they had the huge single. After that, they were just kind of under the radar. My heart says B tier, but honestly, I gotta go C tier because we just didn't get enough from them. I thought they were a lot of fun, though. Up next is the Supremes, and why am I even wasting my breath? The Supremes are the prototype for the female girl group in history. Like, they are the bar. They are the moment. They are the prototype. Word to Andre 3000. They are who it is. Like, I can't even put into words why these should not be anything but S tier. The Supremes set the table for every group that I'm going to mention on this list and every group that I mentioned last time. Absolute classic hits, longevity forever. What can I say? D Roth, where the horns at? S tier. S tier. Easily for the Supremes. Alright, next up is Black. Are you feeling my Timbs, my jeans, my thug appeal? Probably not, because I'm not JC Chavez, the thuggest man in 1999, apparently, according to Black. Well, Black was very good, and I will admit in 99 I did not give them the credit that they deserve, because when they released, they were of course under the tutelage, under the mentorship of Lisa Left Eye Lopez, so everybody was like, oh okay, this is like knockoff TLC, this great value TLC, this Temu TLC, this is TLC that you get from the dollar store. So I love their singles, 808 and Bring It On. I thought these were fun singles, but I didn't really take them seriously as an act until later on when I finally did hear their album. I was like, you know what, this album isn't bad for that R&B pop style. What I really liked is each of the members felt individualistic, sort of like TLC. It didn't seem like 4 cloned women or 3 cloned women like most groups are. Like they all felt individual and they all felt like they brought a different flavor to the projects. Unfortunately, things got really tragic. Of course, we lost Left Eye. We lost Natina, who was a member of the group, but Natina left because she had gotten pregnant, and then she was tragically killed in a car accident, and it was a lot of drama with Black. They did reunite circa 2019, and I thought that project was much better than you would expect. So another group with so much unrealized potential, I'm gonna have to go C tier. I feel like I want to do B, but I have to do C because even though they started very strong, it was just a lot of stuff left on the table. A lot of it was not their fault. I got to go C tier for Black. All right, next up is Invogue, and this is the group y'all were mad at me for not being on the last list. Patience, player, patience. I told you I got you. And yes, we have Invogue here. In the 90s, Invogue was that group. They were the Supremes of the 90s. Incredible vocalists. Held their own. I mean, it's basically them and Brownstone when you talk about vocals. And they were just had hits on hits on hits. So much longevity throughout the entirety of the 90s. Funky Divas, one of those albums that celebrated for its era. So it sounds like with all of this that I'm saying that they should get an S tier ranking, right? Well, I'm probably gonna make y'all mad because I'm probably not gonna go S tier for Invogue. And here's the reason why. Even though they are very celebrated for all of their accomplishments, when I go back and listen to their albums, even back then, I don't love all their albums. They have great songs and great vocal abilities, but the projects aren't always great. And especially the later ones, they really got a lot of unevenness. So even though they contributed so much to R&B in the 90s, just the longevity wasn't there. They were losing members. The later albums weren't as strong. Even some of the albums that are celebrated, I feel like aren't as bulletproof as people think they are in their head. So they, without question, are one of the greatest R&B groups of their generation. I mean, they're probably on the list of one of the greatest ever, but I can't go S tier. I'll go A tier. There's no shame in the A tier, but I know y'all can come for me, but Invogue A tier for me. Next up is the Braxtons, and when you hear Braxtons, I'm sure y'all thinking about a reality show or something. When I hear Braxtons, you know what I hear? So Many Ways from 1996. Player, there were so many ways they played that song on the radio. Do all the things you don't expect me to. Let me count the ways I heard that song in my sleep. They played it so much. But even though they played it into the ground, it was a good song. They had a good project. But the Braxton sisters quickly disappeared, which was unfair because we were like, oh, Tony got some sisters and they can sing too. And, they working with Jermaine Dupri and the album sounds good. We didn't get much from them after that initial project. Of course, Tamar would go on to solo fame much later. decades later. But as far as the project that we got in '96, that's the only thing I can judge on. Unless y'all want to judge that Christmas album, I don't judge Christmas albums. Good group, just didn't give us enough. C tier. All right, time to make y'all mad again, because next up is Danity Kane. I've talked a little bit before about in the early 2010s when social media became a thing, and then you were kind of exposed to different opinions about social media, especially from a younger generation that wasn't yours. Like how I found out that Brandy apparently was the greatest singer of all time. I was like, for real? I like Brandy, but I didn't know the thing she was like Whitney level. Anyway, you know, it's all about generational perspective. And generational perspective, players loved Danity Kane. Like, they thought Danity Kane was one of the greatest groups ever. And I was like, for real? Even when Danity Kane was hot, I always saw them as more of an offshoot of Diddy's old group Dream. I just saw them as like the fun pop girls. I never saw them as an elite R&B group. So you know me, I never diss until I listen to the product myself. So I went, I copped the albums, I listened to everything, and you know what? I was alright. Had a couple songs on it. But I still don't see the ravenous fan base. I'm not sure if it's just based off of the making of the band fame and the reality show stuff that came all along with it. Danity Kane is a solid group, but nothing still wows me about them. So, whatever y'all hearing, I'm not hearing. I'm gonna have to go C tier for this one, D Roth. Yeah, if y'all got heat, come to me in the comments. Leave D Roth alone. He's just dragging the stuff up and down. Don't come for my boy, come for me. 'Cause I know y'all gonna be mad about this one. Next up is who is that? What is it? The Pussycat Dolls? Who put the Pussycat Dolls up here? Player, please. Next. Y'all playing with my emotions. At least we got some great ones coming up next. The Shindellas. I love the Shindellas. My girls. They are a group that builds on the foundation of the legends of the past and brings it into a modern era. We getting harmonies. We getting songs with bridges. We getting well-crafted. Oh, I can't believe it. Shout out to Louis York for putting so much work on them. But most importantly, shout out to the ladies, because no matter what Louis York does as far as the writing and production, these ladies are the ones that's belting it out and doing a tremendous job. They've given us 2 albums so far. Both I thought were great. Both years those albums dropped, they had songs that were in my best songs of the year list. They are incredible. I know they aren't everybody's cup of tea because they are such a throwback sound. But if you look beyond that, they aren't just throwback. It's not like they aren't cosplaying. They have modern sensibilities built upon that. And I think that they have the opportunity in this era where we have, unfortunately, so few female groups. They have an opportunity to really break out and just run and be the standard bearers. I'm giving the Shindellas a B. I want to give them higher than that, but we'll put them in B tier because I think there's still some room to grow. All right, next up is Sister. For those who don't know, Sister is the original group, the original girl group that included Missy Misdemeanor Elliott. Yes. So before Missy, my GOAT, became one of the greatest and most important stars of her era, she was singing along with Sister. And I remember that song Brand New back in VA. I guess it was like 94 or so. It was on the radio. I thought it was okay. But eventually, many years later, we did get their album. Their album is on streaming. It did not release. Like, it was an unreleased project. But you can hear the album easily thanks to the wonders of technology. And I've heard the album is long. It's not great in spots, but in some spots it's really good. You can see the elements of Timbaland and Missy like in there. It's not quite what we would get a couple years later in 96 and 97 with Aaliyah and Missy's solo projects and Genuine. We haven't gotten there yet, but you can hear like the tinkering in the minds that they were getting ready to break out of the sound of the era by doing some new things. And plus the writing was really fresh and different. So this album is a really interesting historical context. But as far as the group itself, we just didn't get that much. I mean, I liked portions of the album, But most of y'all listening to this haven't heard the album, may not have heard of the group. So although there are some talented pits there, I can understand if I was a label executive in '94 and I heard this album, I'd be like, it's good from a critical perspective. I don't know how well it would sell because I don't hear a hit on it. I just hear a lot of stuff that sounds cool and maybe indie-ish. So I can understand why the project did not make it to shelves, even though it's not bad. But while I feel bad for the girls, if that didn't happen, we may not have gotten the Missy that we got today because she would have been tied up. So, man, it's funny how one thing could change music history. Well, for Sister, I'm going to give them a C. What I heard has been okay. There are flashes of greatness, but it was still a little bit too samey for the era. You could tell they could get lost in the shuffle without that initial push. But for the historical context, definitely not player please. We'll give them a C. June's Diary. So we're reaching deep in the bag with June's Diary. By the way, most of these groups that we are featuring today were selected by readers and viewers, and they sent me all these groups. And June's Diary is one of those groups I totally forgot about until someone requested it for this video. And for those who don't remember, June's Diary was kind of like, sort of like Danity Kane, where Kelly Rowland had a reality show and got this group together, and they had this real cult following, really short run. They had a mixtape, they had an EP. I think it was the EP. One was a bunch of covers and one was original songs. I think the EP was the original songs. EP was actually pretty okay. It was short, but again, we didn't get much of anything else after the EP. If we had gotten a full project or maybe a couple years of material, I might be like, oh man, these girls are dope. But we just got some alright stuff and a whole lot of lost potential. So C tier D Roth. Man, y'all leaving too much money on the plate with these female groups. Give these girl groups some love. Next up is Flow, and I'm not talking about the progressive lady. I'm talking about the girl group from Britain. So yes, an honest to God 2024, 2025 girl group that's not the Shandellas. That is an amazing accomplishment. And most of you watching this probably have heard the buzz. They had their debut album last year. They've got a lot of buzz and a lot of, their music sounds very reminiscent of early 2000s R&B. So there's a lot of love for that there. And I think it was cool. I heard the album. I heard a lot of hype. So when I heard the album, I couldn't wait to hear it. I thought the project was okay. It was alright. It wasn't bad, but it definitely didn't wow me. It didn't make my top 50 list of the year. Thought it was okay. There's potential and more room for them to grow, but I like what they're doing. I like their structure. I like how they feel like a legit R&B group and not just, you know, 3 rappers or something. Like they could have made 3 Ice Spices just to get the Instagram algorithm popping, but they didn't do that. These are women that actually study R&B, and you can tell, and I kind of like it. So I can't give them as much as I'm sure most fans really want. A lot of people really want to push them forward and like be like, oh, they're next up, and they could be. I just need to see a little bit more. You know, it takes a lot to impress your boy. So I see glimmers of hope, but I don't know if I want to push them to the top just yet. Let's give them a C tier and see where they move. I'm sure there's going to be more upward trajectory as things go on. All right, I knew we were going to get here. The most disappointing group on this list, and I'm not saying it because their album wasn't good. We are talking about King, aka We Are King. In 2016, the ladies that you were seeing on that little image with the 3 of them dropped their debut album, We Are King. And I'm not kidding y'all. It is one of the best R&B projects I had heard in a decade. To this day, I still think it's one of the best R&B projects of the 2010s. I remember sitting at my laptop, listening to it, being like, am I going to give this album 5 stars? Am I really going to give these girls 5 stars that just have come out of nowhere? The album was absolutely incredible. I didn't give it 5 stars. I gave it 4.5 because y'all know I'd be stingy. But the project was incredible. I was so excited for them. And y'all know, they broke up. Well, they didn't break up, but one group member left. They're a duo now, and they're still, I guess they're still together. They were doing a few tracks here and there as of a couple years ago. Haven't heard anything in a long time. Oh my God. Off the strength of that first album, I'm gonna give them a B tier, because that first album was so incredible and it was just so much potential for them to just take over, and then it just fell apart. So they only have one album. They had some really great songs, some great songwriting, some great, I promise y'all, when this video is done, go check out King We Are King's album, 2016 I believe. You will be blessed. But I guess I'll give them a B for blessed, because they breaking my heart. They should be S tier, but I gotta be fair. B for blessed. And now we're yet another promising group that has gone by the wayside. This list is getting depressing, y'all. VanJess. I really like VanJess. So they popped up in the late 2010s, going into the pandemic era. And as a duo, I liked them. They were kind of like, I guess you can compare them a little bit to Flo, as far as they had kind of a, you could tell that they studied 90s and early 2000s R&B. Theirs was much more mellow than Flo. Flo was very energetic. Theirs was a little bit more moody. They really incorporated a lot of hip hop in their stuff too. But I thought it was very well done. Their projects were both really good. And then they went their separate ways. Like everybody. But what we got was good. Again, the promise is what keeps them from being higher. Once again, let's go B tier for VanJess. They were too good to ignore. And next up is Lele, yet another pioneering group. I mean, they had more name changes than Puffy and more roster changes than Dru Hill, but you know what? People still remember Lele. Of course, yes, Patty. We know her influence on the group as well, but we're not talking about her solo stuff. We're talking about the group itself. And the thing that was really interesting about them is they were able to switch up, because they started out as kind of like doo-wop-ish, and then they went more into like soulful R&B later on, and it worked. They were able to switch over successfully. And they do have their hits, but they don't have as many hits as people really think they do. This is a tough one, because if you go on legacy alone, it's S tier. If I go on just albums, because I don't love all of their albums, and of course some of the lesser ones aren't as good, feels kind of A tier to me. Maybe I'm feeling generous after all those broken up groups we just talked about. But D Roth, let's do S tier. Let's do S tier for Lele. I might change my mind tomorrow, but they are really on the borderline for me. But S tier. Y'all heard the horn. It's S tier. Next up is Chloe and Halle. Yeah, I promised my wife this one, so we had to get them in. Well, you know that old adage, two are better than one? That's sure Chloe and Halle, because I love Chloe and Halle, but you just give me Chloe? Somebody get that girl some direction, because I don't know what's going on with these solo projects of Chloe. It is not popping. Anyway, as a duo, I thought these women were great. And obviously, we know there's going to be comparisons to Destiny's Child due to their connection to Beyonce. You know, just normal. Just kind of makes sense. I get it. But on their own, they're still very, very good. Their album, Ungodly Hour, which came out in the ungodly pandemic era, that album was by far one of the strongest ones of that weird era. And it just makes me sad that we can't get more of that. I felt like that they were really just going up the ladder, and I was really interested in their next project, because I thought that between the first one and the second one, I thought the third one, they were really going to explode. But, you know, Halle decided to do her acting thing, which is cool. Chloe decided to do her music thing, which some of y'all like, but I don't. Can we have a reunion? I want a reunion. I want y'all back together. B tier for Chloe and Halle. Next up is Sister Sledge, and yep, we are at another group of incredible trendsetters. I know if y'all youngins are listening to this, you're like, who is Sister Sledge? I don't know, that's old head group. Look, you think you don't know who Sister Sledge is? You know exactly who Sister Sledge is. You've heard the song, We Are Family. You've ever been to one cookout in your life, you've heard that song. Therefore, you know Sister Sledge. And they are an incredible group. They are the disco queens. They were the queens of the disco era. But, unfortunately, when you look at what they did, their biggest claim to fame, you know, they have like 10 million albums. Their biggest claim of fame was pretty much like that late 70s, early 80s. Like that one little box is when they were super big. Everything else was good, like it was well done. But the strongest part of their legacy was confined to just that one little era. And because of that, I'm gonna probably get in trouble with my old heads and lose some of my cred. I gotta go A tier instead of S tier here, because so much of their success was just in one little portion of the decades that they were performing at. So I gotta be fair. If they had dominated more, if they were like dominant for the entire 70s or like most of the 80s, I could give it to them. But just for that little block, nah, let's do A tier. No shame in A tier. I keep saying that so y'all don't run in my mentions. Next up is Before Dark. And yep, this is another group I had totally forgot about until someone mentioned it in the comments and recommended it for this video. I'm not even sure I had even heard their album before now. So I went and made sure I listened to the project, because I only vaguely remember the name. I think they were like 99 era. And then when I listened to it, I was like, oh, this is definitely 99 era. The songs were very much of that Tricky Stewart, Dark Child sound. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I mean. That poppy R&B with the hyperactive, the violin, and that sound, and the bloop, 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 bloop. All of that stuff that kind of was commonplace in late 90s, early 2000s R&B. That's this Before Dark album. But that album was good. I was shocked. I was like, this album is pretty good and holds up pretty well. I mean, it sounds dated because it has that sound that we're all kind of like, man, they wore that sound out back then. But I thought the album holds up. But of course, they didn't do anything beyond that. So whereas it might seem like an easy player please, I'm not going to put them in player please because I like their album a little bit more than I expected. So let's go C tier, D Roth. I would suggest that you go check out their album though, especially if you're a fan of late 90s R&B. You might like this project. It was pretty okay. Been waiting for this one. My girl Shay's Tell Me Your Name. What car do you drive? How much money do you make? These old greedy gold digger chicks. That's what it was in 1997. The ladies were after our pockets. But that was the sound in 97. So Shades were a group that just kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, in the 90s, there were just so many female groups everywhere. And this one popped up. They had the song, I'll Be Around. I think it was, I can't remember if it was Tell Me I'll Be Around or I'll Be Around Tell Me. But you know the song if you're from 97. They wore that song out and I loved it. It was so petty, so wrong that you're just draining these brothers dry. They straight up say it in the song. They're like, I don't care, I just want your money, dude. But I love the song. It used the same sample as LL Cool J's Loungin'. They were out at the same time, so it was weird because you had two songs with the same basically beat out at the same time. But I love Shades. I love the song. I have heard their album. Their album was pretty decent. It wasn't, of course, y'all know the bar of the 90s is pretty high. But if it came out today, I think people would be like, oh, it'd be like the Flow album. Y'all be like, oh, this album alright. This album's pretty good. But it was overlooked at the time just because competition was so high. And again, we got that one album and we didn't hear anything else from them again. Like so many of the groups on this list. I'm going to give them C tier because I like the album and I love that shady song. See what I did there? So I'm a fan of Shades. Let's give them C tier. And yes, we're going to wrap things up with the group that was most requested last time, Escape. One of my favorite groups. And look, y'all think it was tribalism now? Go back to the 90s because in the 90s they always made you print. You had to choose. You had to be Prince or Michael Jackson. You had to be Escape or SWV. Why can't I like both? I like both. I don't want to choose. And Escape was very, very good. They were the first ladies of So So Def. They had hits all over the place. And there were hits that resonated with both women and men. Let me share my story. So in 96, 97, I was on a field trip for school. It was like one of those bus trips where you're gone all day. We love those. There was this girl I'd never met before. And she was sitting in the bus seat, like to my right. I was sitting to the left. And she had a CD player. And we struck up a conversation. And I was asking what she was listening to. And she was like, I've got the new Escape album. You can listen to it. You're probably not going to like it, though, because, you know, dudes don't like R&B because that was the sentiment. Dudes listen to hip-hop, girls listen to R&B. And I was like, I like Escape. I'm going to listen to it. So she gives me her CD player, listen to the Escape album, Off the Hook, their second album. I listened to that album the whole time to the trip and the whole time back. I was such a terrible human being. I took the girl's CD. She was talking to her friend the whole time. She didn't get to listen to the CD because I was sitting there listening to it the whole time. I love that album. And I went and I bought it and I still have the copy today. It's not the girls. It's the one that I copped myself. So I'm a big Escape fan, and I think most people do appreciate what Escape brings to the table. But it's funny because so much of their legacy today is wrapped up in drama and who mad at who and who broke up with this and who's suing this person and reality show and who mama's mad. So we forget about the hits because in the 90s, yes, it was SWV and it was Escape. And yeah, we had TLC and Destiny's Child and all those and Invogue, but those two were always compared to each other. And to me, that was a great honor because they were incredible. When I think about how we score them, though, I know some people would want to go S tier. I'm not going to go S tier because we only got 3 albums and then they vanished. However, I will never say they fell off because all 3 albums are of great quality. All 3 albums went platinum. They didn't fall off. They just bowed out. But I can't put them on the level of Destiny's Child or TLC because they just never hit that extra level of notoriety and fame. So let's go A tier. I'm going to go A tier for Escape. I love those. Those are my girls, though. All good to Escape. Whew. All right, y'all. We are done. We are done with female group tier list part 2. D Roth. Show the people what we got. Show them the final product here. Yes, look at it. Isn't it so beautiful? Don't you agree? This is part 2 of the female R&B group tier list. I think we did a good job. We got a whole lot of forgotten groups in there. We got some legendary groups in there as well. So let me know because it's now your time. I'm going to put it in your hands. Speaking of hands, I hope the Danity Kane fans don't have keys in their hands keying up my car when they saw that ranking. But anyway, what would you do? Where would you rank these ladies? Let me know below if anybody was a little too low, if anybody was too high. And the most pressing question, clearly y'all love these tier lists. What should we do next? We've done the male R&B groups. We've done the female R&B groups. Who should get the tier treatment next? Should I do male hip-hop groups? Should I do, I don't know, decades of music? Y'all let me know. Help me brainstorm. I'll hear it out in the comments and we'll see what's good. This edition of the Soul and Stereo Sessions is a wrap. And can I just have one moment of silence for girl groups? Because we have like 2 now, and that makes me sad. We got to do more than Flo and the Shindellas. Bring back R&B girl groups. Female R&B groups were a foundation of the genre. We want them back. I just did a list of almost 50 groups. Why are we at 2? Bring them back. They're dope. Chloe and Halle, get back together so I don't have to hear any more solo Chloe albums. Please. Play on, players.